This is the proof copy of my new book, Before There Were Flowers. I received this last week, and you review the interior layout of the book and also the cover and how it's all going to kind of work together. And the interior turned out beautiful, using two different fonts. And in this book, there's a lot of dialogue, but there's also a lot of people reflecting on conversations that they knew. The whole book talks about relationships of all different kinds, friendships, marriages, all stuff, sex workers, children, all kinds of different things. And every person in the book has a different animal characteristic. And so I thought this morning, I'm on my boat on the lake. I'm about to pull the boat out of the water. But the majority of this book was written in my home in Ortigia, Sicily, and in my apartment there, right beside the sea. There was about 3 chapters that I wrote in the state of Virginia, and the chapter I'm going to read for you today, I wrote right here on this boat on a lake called Lake Mumal. And the other couple of chapters, which I'll read in the future, I wrote at a farm out in Buckingham County. So anyways, this is the chapter I wrote on the book. The book I wrote on the boat, and it's chapter 31, titled "The Princess of Cats." In this chapter, I talk about Princess of Cats. I talk about Boaz, King of Babylon, character from the Bible. I talk about Mary Magdalene. I talk about Jesus. And one of the main people that's going to be talking about Mary Magdalene and Jesus is the centurion named Polyphemus, who actually stabbed the side of Christ. And so I enjoy it. Chapter 31, The Princess of Cats. Who is this Princess of Cats, and why must Morpho go to her through the dunes alone? Laughter crowds the air. Is she really that powerful and enchanting? Laughter murmurs to itself. Come now, please, Polyphemus. In this firelight you look all devilish and mad. What makes this Felonia so enchanting? Confidence. Aye, confidence. She propels it like a javelin. Is she a god? Oh God, yes. Is she fairer than others? Taller? More brilliant? For once they turned serious. No. There are fairer, yes. There are taller, no doubt. But what? Can you tell me? Adonis looked at him in the firelight. She is queen, and she moves as if treading a carpet unseen. Confidence. Is that what it means? What is her kingdom? Her kingdom. Every tin of fish. Do you remember Boaz? Yes. You can save a king from everything except himself. He met Felonia, and then turned himself to pasture for 10 years. He lived in the Campania with oxen, the king of Babylon, feeding and dunging among cattle. Born under the same star sign. Oh, you're right. I never thought of that. Forever friends turned him mad. Love is the greatest of sickness, and yet the very antidote to it. How have you done it, Adonis? Stayed sane. Oh, have I? He peered into the far night. I have just lately resigned myself that it's never going to happen again for me. It's just not in the stars. Or maybe that star, is just burned out now. Like I caught the tail end of its light those last few days. And where love once was held for me, and where I hoped it would be again, but now I'm realizing that there's nothing there to reflect love's light to me. Oh, don't say that. No, I mean it. I haven't given up hope entirely, just it's on my mind. It sounds that way. Do you remember Mary Magdalene? Polyphemus leaned forward into the light. You're talking about that true artist who fell in love with Christ. Indeed. Jesus was the fellow. Remember all that trouble? Of course. Hard not to. In Germania, many centurions would sit at night and proclaim that when they returned home, they'd prove their salt and ask Mary to wed. Being honest, I too would lay in my tent at night and think of life with her. Funny, a soldier in the midst of war and bloodshed, and yet can be brought to tears over loneliness. Wanting to be comforted and touched and nurtured even. No other woman can make you feel that way. Mary did. With just a few words, the heart took wing. Men would say, Mary, worth her salt, that Mary. Stand we would in front of that house, others near, or purring near us. And yet we abided for the audience of Mary. Centurions, laden in armor and leather strapping, crimson scarves, showing athleticism over boasting to her of our chariots, wielding our swords, and then comes Jesus in his woodmaker sandals. He stops at Mary's and says to her in that sweet voice, how are you feeling today? That's what he said. Not of chariots, gladiators, or pounds of salt, but how are you feeling today? We were dumbfounded, and doubtless repeated it like fools. How are you feeling today? And the sweetest words would pass her lips. Cozy, cozy. We hated him. I mean, don't get me wrong. He's a nice fellow. Misunderstood, yes, of course. But, well, we would jest with him. Say, what is your profession? I can't tell from your untethered hair and white cotton robes. He'd speak and we'd cock our ears and say, louder! Again, never frustrated, the response came. I'm an artist. Fisher of men, I'd say. Truly painful, fisher of women. Mary's gaze fell upon him. He'd be gone for days, and Mary would ask, where hast thou been? He'd say something like, I took my boat upon the sea and watched the stars all night. Like candles, Mary's eyes illuminated, and she'd return, pensando a ti. She'd sit and move his hair behind his ear and feed him figs, that purple love fruit, irresistible. We were all witness to him stealing her away. Then he wrote the book and healed the sick, and I too remember when he fed the 5,000. Mary would say, read to me more of your book. And he would touch her hand and say, I'm becoming more conflicted with its end. And she'd return, tell me again how it's written. He'd sit and thump its empty pages and say, you see, Mary, my life story is written with love. He fished her heart to him with words, bound herself to him with truth. Was he God? Francis asked. Of course he was. Who else deserved her love? He breathed deeply. It was a shame, I mean, don't get me wrong. We all hated him for stealing her away. Even Herod fancied Mary, even more than his slave boy. Polyphemus, did you crucify Christ? Oh no, Francis. God, no, of course not. All I did was stab him. What? You stabbed Christ? Oh yeah, I've stabbed many men quite easy. You stabbed Christ. He was dead already. It's no big deal. I mean, it bothered me, yes, for a while, but then I forgave myself for it. You forgave yourself for stabbing a man. You forgave your own self. Yes, I highly recommend it. Well, Adonis helped me realize and understand that it was in some way, it was God's will. And that in the larger scheme of the world, it was destiny. And therefore I had no real control over the situation. It made me feel a lot better. Adonis helped you rationalize your stabbing Christ. Exactly. My friend Adonis. Listen, Francis. Jesus was a great prophet. I learned much from his teachings and still remember sourly, of course, the lessons he taught me about love. Polyphemus turned to Francis and wrote in the sand. You see here this name, Caesar. Do you know what that name means? No, I do not. When the Senate selects a new ruler of Rome, he is given the name Caesar and is thought in that moment to become a god. The name Caesar means Son of God. You see, just as Jesus used words to fish Mary's heart to his ego used words to betray his truthful message. When he entered Jerusalem, he claimed to be the Son of God. Francis, Rome can only have one Caesar. So is this why you've always been a bachelor? Because Jesus won Mary's affection? Polyphemus thought. I think it has to do more with the last thing I ever heard him say. She came with others to Golgotha to remove his body. I don't know if you've ever witnessed a crucifixion, but God could not survive that, much less a man. His flesh was ripped and bones were showing. His legs broken, and of course the nasty wound in his side that I gave him. Polyphemus stopped. I watched her as they laid his cross and body down. We all did. All of us that at one time or another Mary had given her body to. It was like we didn't exist. Like we were dust in the air, undetectable. I mean that her self-judgment was undetectable. She was not embarrassed that we had all known her. And yet here she was professing her true love for this man. You see, that's what gets me. In Jesus' eyes, he was the one with the greater shame. She had given her body to men and women in that community, and sure, people heaped scorn and shame upon her. But Jesus had given his body to the whole world, to every man and to every woman, for her to love him unconditionally, without judgment of his future or his past, was the love that he wrote his story with. She knelt over him, not going to his head with the thorns or the hands that had been nailed or the legs broken, but she went to his feet and there hovered. She had no water for washing save her own tears. She had no cloth save her own hair. She wept and washed his feet, and she whispered, "When I cannot look at you, I look at your feet. Hard and bony, yet I love them. Because they walked on earth and upon water and across the wind of time until they found me. It's chapter 31 in my new book, Before There Were Flowers. Hopefully it will be out very soon. Take care, have a wonderful day, show yourself a lot of love.